The Florida Panthers squandered their multiple power play opportunities against the Tampa Bay Lightning, and a star cat has returned to the ice in a practice setting.
You're Locked On Panthers, your daily podcast on the Florida Panthers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome into the Sunday, December 28th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcasting network in North America. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. I'm Armando Velez from the Hockey News. You follow me on X at Monoman12. That is Kassi Coviello joining me on today's edition of the show from the Substack Chick in the Stands. You could follow her on X at Kassi_Coviello. And shout out to every day who come back here and get your daily Florida Panthers fix. So, Florida Panther fans, grateful to be back here once again on the show to discuss everything in the world of the Florida Panthers. On today's show, we are going to discuss the Florida Panthers losing to the Tampa Bay Lightning by a final of 4-2 on Saturday after the holiday break. Then we are going to discuss the Panthers' record pre and post breaks. That includes Thanksgiving and the holidays, and how the Panthers' outlook right now is, as they are currently in a span of 5 games in 9 days. And we are going to discuss the return of Matthew Tkachuk in a practice setting. So, Kassi, welcome to the show on your Locked On Florida Panthers podcast debut here on the show. So let's get right into it. The Florida Panthers lose by a final score of 4-2. And it was really the Panthers' inability to convert multiple times, more than once on the power play, which they did eventually get a power play goal thanks to Brad Marchand. And similarly to the first matchup, they scored quickly against the Tampa Bay Lightning. The goals were different, but you give up a goal shorthanded, and every post-whistle scrum, it was the Panthers getting an opportunity for a power play, and it's just the inability to really get the game tied. And it was really for the Panthers, mistakes in the neutral zone and inability to defend on the rush. And again, when you get 11 power plays, you expect to score more than once.
Yeah, first and foremost, thanks for having me, Armando. Excited to make my debut with you today, and totally agree with you on that. With 11 power play opportunities, you would maybe hopefully expect to see 4 or 5 goals scored there, but 1 power play goal from Brad Marchand, it was a pretty one, so at least we have that. But definitely agree with you that there should have been more, and they came at opportune times to get the game either tied or get back into it. I know at one point we had a stretch of about a few minutes of back-to-back power plays, and that really felt like we should have capitalized there and gotten, the momentum back in our favor and rolling. But unfortunately, Andrei Vasilevskiy is a very tough opponent in net, and he was making some crazy saves.
Yeah, and for the Panthers, I mean, there was 4 power plays in a row in between the second and the third period for them. And I mean, in the second half of one of the double minors that they had, the Panthers were really, truly starting to buzz. And to think that, it's crazy that we should have kind of seen this coming with how much the power play, with how the power play was struggling on the night, especially because when their first goal from Eetu Luostarinen came on the board, that was their first shot of the game, and their power play was not doing so well right before scoring. And then you think a little bit of a battle in front of the net, and then Eetu, not even on the blade of the stick, it's more on the actual cross. He's able to convert that past Andrei Vasilevskiy. It's crazy. We've seen so many times about how the Panthers have scored not only towards the end of power plays, but a few seconds after. I mean, Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Final in 2024 against the Edmonton Oilers, power play 2 is on the ice, and then Evan Rodriguez threw one for Carter Hagee to redirect it past Stuart Skinner. But speaking of games that kind of relate as far as trends and everything, this game, the power play opportunities, as far as the 11 opportunities, kind of reminded me of the Nashville game just a few weeks ago on that Thursday, where the Panthers had 6 of them, and except the Panthers had the lead for them and couldn't get that insurance goal to get the full 2 points, instead of that coming out with 1. And then the fact that the Tampa Bay Lightning scored towards the end of the first period, where an errant pass by Uvis Balinskis, and then the Panthers were unable to defend off the rush. They commit too much to the strong side. That kind of reminds me of the St. Louis Blues game. So there's certain trends that the Panthers that we've seen repeated here for them, as far as ability to close, in one example, close out a period, but at the same time, the Panthers' inability to convert on the power play, and especially the Lightning at times, I didn't really see them getting the clears themselves. It was more the Panthers misconnecting from the boards to the point, and then the Panthers it was going all the way back, and the Tampa Bay Lightning were able to get those clean changes. So the Panthers really, truly helped on their misconnections.
Yeah, I totally agree with that as well. And that referencing that late period goal, those are always kind of those crushing ones, unless you're on the positive side of it. And with 8 seconds left in the first period, after it being an even score, the Lightning taking that 2-1 lead, and definitely altered, I think, the way the game was played after that point, after allowing that one to go in. And like you were mentioning, with some of the trends with the power play not being able to capitalize on those opportunities, it did look reflective of a few games in the past. And I think Panthers fans are very used to the fact that the power play is a bit streaky and it runs hot and cold. And yeah, definitely yesterday was a bit of a cold day.
Yeah, and let's also put a little bit of context here. Is because of the fact that there were so many of these post-whistle scrums, these coincidental minors, they didn't necessarily have every single one of their guys on the top power play unit all at the same time. I mean, there were times where Mackie Samoskevich was playing on the top power play unit. There was times where both Sam Reinhart and Sam Bennett were in the box for something of a coincidental minor. But at the same time, the Panthers at times got into the heads of Tampa Bay. It's very obvious that in these last 2 years, it has been the Panthers that have been on top as far as the playoff series, based on what's happened as far as a hit that they take exception to, or something that wasn't called. For example, the Anton Lundell stick to the face of Jake Gensel, which was, if you're zooming out of that, maybe that should have been a high stick by Anton Lundell, but the Lightning were on the power play, and that one ended their opportunity, and then it went to a 4-on-4, and then you're thinking about Nico Mikkola finishing his check on Scott Sabourin, and then he throws a slash right at the legs. Both of them actually get fined for that, Anton Lundell and Scott Sabourin, which I don't know if you saw the Lightning Habs game. Scott Sabourin got into a fight with Arbor Jacki and got whooped there. So is karma maybe a little bit coming to Scott Sabourin there?
Yes, he's definitely a feisty one there. And like you were mentioning, you can't call everything all the time, especially in a Panthers Lightning game, even if it is a regular season one. And this one already had over 136 penalty minutes. So a few things have to go uncalled. And I think it happens to both sides, and it does happen throughout the game. And those penalty boxes were looking a little full. So maybe that was part of the reason.
No doubt. And we were talking about this pre-production right before we started recording here. And between all the preseason games, and the two regular season games between these two teams, $191K in total fines between these two teams. And if you are out there questioning how bitter this rivalry is, that number alone should tell the whole story. I know that doesn't really say much as far as the comparison to NHL players versus what we make going just talking on a microphone on a podcast, but still, that's a lot of dough that is dished out there for the Panthers. And also, the Panthers really. Let's also not forget that the Panthers really truly had a good amount of chances shorthanded. Lundell, Luosterainen were also one. Brad Marchand had one that had the fans out of their seats almost, that the Panthers almost converted. But so I'm still quite impressed by the penalty kill. You just hate to see that it was a net when it came to the power play opportunities, as the Tampa Bay Lightning were able to get one shorthanded for themselves there on Saturday night. But we're going to transition over to segment number 2, where we're going to discuss the history of the Panthers in the Paul Maurice era of pre and post breaks, how there's not necessarily a correlation equals causation in result of that. We'll discuss that all next here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. But first, we're going to tell you guys all about Game Time. And there's nothing like being near the ice during hockey season. The speed, hits, atmosphere, it's unmatched. Watching at home is great, but being in the building is a completely different experience. The only thing that used to get in the way was getting tickets, long queues, endless screens, and prices changing at checkout. That's why the Game Time app gives the advantage back to the fans. It's a hack for unlocking amazing NHL tickets and experiences in just a few taps. I pulled up the Game Time app and checked out a few NHL games and was surprised how fast it was to getting great seats. The app is incredibly easy to use, browsing, comparing buying tickets in just minutes. See NHL tickets available for as low as $25 makes it easy to plan a game night. I really like that fees are included up front, so the price is the price you pay. Take the guesswork out of buying NHL tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL. That's LOCKEDON NHL for $20 off of your first purchase. Terms apply. Create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. And I'd like to thank you guys once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day here on a Sunday night. Armando Velez here with Kassi Coviello of Chick in the Stands, the Substack. And make sure that you are joining our Everydayer Club. And thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day and making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. Access to an ad-free audio feed on Locked On Florida Panthers compatible with Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and every other podcast app. An invite to the members only Locked On Everydayer Discord server, which includes group chats just for listeners of the show. Check out the link in the show notes to learn more. So, Kassi, the Florida Panthers, this is something that you and I were actually texting about 8 hours before coming on to the microphone. I wanted to go year by year of how the Panthers looked pre and post break. And there's not necessarily a trend that has gone really in one direction for the Panthers. It's just been so hit and miss. One year they win both. They split one. They win both. Other years they have lost both. It's funny because there have been actually some really memorable ones pre and post break. So the record is 7-9 for Thanksgiving and pre and post Thanksgiving and pre and post Christmas. Some of the most memorable ones: the Vegas game in 2023 where Ryan Lomberg got Keegan Colasar with one punch and knocked them out from there. And there has been some not memorable ones where the Panthers lose to in Jakob Dobish's debut from last year, and you saw that the Panthers just didn't have their legs there, and it was a matinee game. Let's also not forget that. But then you've seen a shutout in 2023 post Thanksgiving against Winnipeg. So I'm surprised. I'm surprised it hasn't leaned one direction towards the other. But if we do look at this for the Florida Panthers, as far as these last 2 years, it has been coming off a Stanley Cup championship. It has been 2 losses coming off of the winter break. So maybe it's a matter of the mileage is getting to them, but at the same time, not being unapologetic for enjoying your time off while you have it.
Exactly. And I think, like you said, with coming off of the holidays, there is a little bit of a lag there. You haven't practiced just because of how the CBA is set up. There is no team activities for those few days around Christmas. So you are just kind of coming in fresh and getting ready to roll. And luckily we were at home, and for the Lightning as well, it's a very small travel day. But like you said, it just kind of is hit or miss if they win or lose post break. And typically we see similar teams as well around the holiday time. We always, typically have a game with the Rangers, Montreal, usually some cross-state stuff with Tampa. St. Louis is in recent years been before the break. So kind of seeing repeat teams. So I'm not sure if that plays into it. Just playing teams, you are familiar with around this time of year kind of sets the same stage year after year.
No doubt. And if they are on the road post break, I mean, in 2024, they're a post break. They went to Carolina and won. And then in 2023, it was post break that they went straight to Tampa Bay, which I was able to be in the building for that one. And let's not forget, when you're coming straight off the break, that game was on a Wednesday in 2023. So the Panthers were flying in and going to a morning skate after. And even Paul Maurice said that it wasn't Paul Maurice, it was Jovo on the broadcast said the road team does the advantage because they're more in that work mode and getting into the plane and getting back there ready for work. I mean, you could only imagine that maybe Tampa Bay boarded their plane maybe around like 7, 8 a.m. and their Fort Lauderdale FLL is not too far from the Panthers practice facility, and then they get their morning skate for the road team, which is at 11:30. So a little bit of that being more in that mode, while the Panthers, a lot of them lived close by, some of them drive their golf carts, so it's maybe just waking up at 8:30 and getting in your golf cart and just going right to the facility right before your 10 a.m. Morning skate as well. So psychologically, the two teams are in different places. But Paul Maurice did talk about how before the game, it was a wild card for both teams coming out of the break. And the one thing that he did speak about is where their hands will be. Will it cooperate with the body and the skating with everything? So that's another thing that's another key when it comes to that. But thankfully, the Panthers, they're in a big stretch of 5 games in 9 nights, and three in these next 4 days. This is the off day that we are discussing this. And man, is it really truly go time for this team.
It really is. And we have these 4 home games coming up with the back-to-back Monday, Tuesday at home. So hopefully we can get the home energy going. And then technically we are the home team on Friday, but we are not playing at home. But it is, home for the Panthers there and being in South Florida and in Miami. So hopefully, taking all of that energy and coming off of that and then wrapping up with that game Sunday against Colorado at home. So hopefully we can get a few, wins together over this stretch before hitting the road.
No doubt. And I think I want to focus more on this in this back-to-back on Monday and Tuesday, because I mean, Montreal just came back from 3-0 to the Tampa Bay Lightning, but they did ultimately lose in a shootout, which Jacob Fowler, first Floridian-born player to make his NHL debut in goal, 21st overall as far as hockey player, but first goalie, lost in a shootout. They had the ice tilted in their direction for most of it. So it's a high flying run and gun type of team, which the Panthers have actually fared well against those as far as slowing things down, especially with their gap control in the neutral zone, which I'm very curious about that. And then Washington, both in the top 10 as in goals for and goals against. They're getting goals from the back end. Jacob Chychrun, South Florida native, is definitely providing some of those goals. Tom Wilson is trying to make a last-ditch effort to make the Canadian Olympic team as well. Ovi just got 9-12 just the other day. And Logan Thompson, he could be the second starter if Jordan Binnington does not perform well in game number 1. I do think that you do give Binnington the first game, and then you go from there. But thankfully for the Panthers' loss, they didn't lose any ground. They're still in the second wildcard spot, but look at the teams that they're facing just in these next 2 nights. Washington on Monday, who's 3 points ahead of them for the first wildcard, and then Montreal, who they have a game in hand on. If they win, and then they'll be 2 points behind them. If you win in regulation, although you're tied in points, the first tiebreaker is regulation wins. So. And even Carter Verhaeghe was even talking about it, is like you can't Sam Reinhart, was talking about how you can't waste these opportunities of getting points when guys are out. And then even Carter Verhaeghe added on kind of to that, is like it's not winning about winning 10 games in a row. It's about trying to stay in the fight. And man, I'm just looking at this back-to-back right here, and I know there's not a lot of separation between wild card and last, but man, could this really be that jump to not be in that conversation anymore?
Yeah, especially with the game against Montreal, it's always interesting when you're playing someone in your division, especially for positioning. So that's an important one to hopefully pick up the 2 points, and doing it in regulation would be ideal. But it does remind me a bit of before the break, having that back-to-back at home and the energy that was in the arena with that Carolina comeback, but then losing to St. Louis. But trying to channel some of that spark and that fight and that home crowd support through Monday and Tuesday, and hopefully everyone's excited for Winter Classic, and we can just get some points here.
Yeah, no doubt. And how awesome would it be with 2 days off before the Winter Classic to get even some more excitement versus getting versus if you do drop these, you're heading into you're creating some negative momentum, and then you really truly face a must-win situation on Friday night against the New York Rangers, which the New York Rangers have not lost in any of the outdoor games that they've played. And they play better on the road than they do at home. So really important for the Panthers to really truly get at least 3 out of the 4 points. 4 points would be a lot better for them in these next 2 games. But we're going to transition over to segment number 3, where we have a Matthew Tkachuk sighting in a practice setting. We are going to give our thoughts. Paul Maurice is going to give us a timeline of what could happen, and we'll discuss a weather update and possibly some arrival attire ideas next here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Third and final segment here on this Sunday, December 28th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. Armando Velez here with Kassi Coviello of Chick in the Stands. You can follow her Substack there for everything that she has going on there. And also check out her Etsy shop where you could get one of these stickers. And also on my computer, I have a sticker of the back-to-back with a rat on it. So those are some of the cool things that you could see and buy on her Etsy shop. So check that out there. But Kassi, oh my goodness. The news that it's the worst kept secret in a way, but it's finally happened where Matthew Tkachuk is back in a practice setting. And one of the warnings that I did give to the fan base when discussing on the show was about the lack of practice time that the Panthers have. And you mentioned it in the previous segment with the CBA, how you're not allowed to have any on-ice activities during the 3-day break, which the players have definitely fought for their break. And honestly, as a person working in this space, I'm more than happy to have gotten those 3 days off, but that's neither here nor there. But Matthew Tkachuk was back in a yellow non-contact sweater, mind you. He's been working a lot on his own there and working with head trainer Max Ivanov there. But he's one step closer to coming back, and man, is that great to see, especially with what has been covered as far as the ad for Sherwood Hockey, the road to the Winter Classic. But man, even if he doesn't play on Friday, it's truly just exciting to see that he's one step closer.
Yeah, who knew that yellow jersey would look so good? It's usually one you don't want to see one of your players wearing, but when it came to Matthew Tkachuk, it was a great sight to see when it popped up on social media today, seeing him in that yellow no contact jersey. It was cool to also get with the NHL's Road to the Winter Classic series, getting a little sneak peek of him on ice. He was in, I believe it was episode 1. We got to see a little bit of his training, but to now see it in a Florida Panthers practice setting is even more exciting. And yeah, even if he doesn't play Friday in the Winter Classic, just having him that much closer to returning is the most important part.
And speaking of the Winter Classic, we are going to play a clip from Paul Maurice when asked about his timeline. So here is what the bench boss had to say about that.
I don't know. There's a whole bunch of things he's got to get through. The question is there enough time? He might be healthy enough or close to enough that he could play, but we're not making that. We're not guessing on this. So there's a bunch of things he's got to numbers that he has to hit, and then. It's been 6 months since there's been a hockey game played, so as much as we'd like the spectacle of it, and we'd love him to be a part of it, and it'd be great for the game to see him out there, the Florida Panthers need him healthy, and we need him for the rest of the year. So that will be and it's really not my decision, and it shouldn't be. This is going to be doctors inform the player, and the doctors make the decision, and then we'll let them go.
As neat as it is, the Winter Classic, we get it, but it's one of 82, right?
100%. And this isn't one of those, like, for Matthew's had some big moments in the game of hockey, right? And he's not 42, where this is his last chance to do something really unique or interesting. I love all those guys. I feel the same way Matthew not playing Barkey, Gadge, all of them. Nose, Schwinner, all of those guys, Cooley, right? You'd love them for being a part. But their families, they're going to be there. The families are going to be there. And it's not like they've been in and out of the lineup for us. They've just been out. So we won't notice it.
And the takeaway I get from that is, number one, err on the side of caution, so that you're not putting any expectations out there. But also, Paul Maurice is taking the pressure fully off of himself when it comes to when it comes to whether he plays or not. Obviously, for such a big event like this, you want him out there. But obviously, if you're on the other side and you're the player in Matthew, you are asking, "What am I good?" I'm trying to just do all the convincing that you can to say, "Hey, I feel great. Please put me out there. Test me out right now." So I could just only imagine the begging that Matthew Tkachuk is doing, possibly, but also, you know, sometimes you also got to save a person from themselves at the same time, which I understand. But I'm glad that Paul Maurice is not putting any false promises to the fan base.
Yeah, it'll be a nice surprise if he does play, but if he doesn't, we won't be disappointed, because there is a bigger picture in mind, and we don't want, someone being brushed back maybe 1 or 2 games earlier, whatever the case is, and something happens in that game and it sets the timeline back again. As Panthers fans, we are rooting for his long-term health and success, so we want to see him in more games than just the one. So maybe they can take all of our injured Panthers players and, put them in the uniform and give them their own bench, and we can wave to them or something, so we can see all of our injured ones back for the Winter Classic.
Yeah, no doubt. And hey, Keith Tkachuk is going to be there to see what the event is going to be. And also Paul Maurice did say during his media availability, we don't have a clip of that, but he said that learning how to win without your best players help you find new players who are fits. And the player that comes to mind is AJ Greer, about how he stepped up from a 4th line role to going from 2nd line and 3rd line from time to time, and getting 7 goals, a career high right now that he has. And we're not even at the halfway point of the season. We're almost there. But those are guys that you see, hey, they're taking more of a leadership role. Sam Reinhart and Brad Marchand. Brad Marchand was really hot. Sam Reinhart took a little bit to at least be more of a distributor after the first month of the season, but he's definitely gotten his his apples throughout, especially with how he's back with Lundell and Luosterainen. I mean, man, did the Panthers miss Luosterainen after those 8 games miss there. And I mean, it's not a coincidence that the Panthers started humming after that. But for the next week, this is other than Hurricane Milton and possibly delaying opening night in 2024. This is going to be partially a weather podcast, as we will be discussing possible the weather for the Winter Classic. So because we are within a week of the actual event, we do have projections for highs and lows for Friday night at Lone Depot Park. The high on Friday night is going to be 70 degrees, while the low is going to be 52 with an 8 p.m. puck drop, Kassi. I'm going to assume it's going to be somewhere between 55 and 59 by the time it gets to nighttime in Little Havana in Miami-Dade County. So that truly excites me, as a lot of people were thinking, is it truly going to be an outdoor game? Looks like we are actually going to have it.
Yeah, and it's going to be really exciting if it does hit that 50s point, which is our Florida cold. And I'm sure that's what the NHL was anticipating and expecting, that this is South Florida and it will be 70 degrees in the end of December and early January. But we do get some of those cooler nights, and hopefully, as long as it stays clear skies, we can open that that roof and have, some of that cooler air come through while we're all watching the game go on in our Winter Classic jerseys. Just really thinking about that weather and standing outside in those jerseys in the South Florida heat. So I'm excited to hear about this low of 50.
Yeah, and if you're watching on the YouTube, we have a few pictures from George Richards of Florida Hockey Now, and NHL.com correspondent of the latest updates of the rink. It's basically done. The glass is up, and the locker rooms have been set up. The Marlins dugout is going to be the Florida Panthers locker room, and obviously the Rangers are going to get the visiting locker room there right before coming out. The Panthers will also be coming out of the Marlins dugout as well. So pretty cool. And with Steve Mayer discussing a few weeks ago how it's going to be fire on one side, ice on the other, I'm going to assume the fire side because Florida is in the more south than New York. It's going to be on the left side, while the ice side is going to be on the second to first base side. And the way the boards are put together, it's literally directly third to first. So close enough to at least for everybody above those home plate seats to at least see everything. But obviously the higher up you sit, in my opinion, for this kind of event, the better it's going to be. Interesting to see what the views will be at in the lower level. But because we have Kassi on the show, one of her things that she discusses on her Substack is fashion here. So for the Winter Classic, it's tradition for the teams to at least come out in some form of attire coming into the mix. So I want to give the floor to you on what you would like to see the Panthers and or the Rangers come into the ballpark with, since you are a native New Yorker yourself.
Yes, yeah. I'm super excited. I love every year watching what teams are going to do, wearing, special coordinated outfits into Winter Classic or Stadium Series and things like that, and seeing what unique things teams can come up with. And I'm sure a lot of people are thinking Florida Panthers game in Miami, leaning into that Miami Vice vibe. And I think this year they are going to lean into that. I know a few other ideas is beach and themes like that, but the Panthers did that last season in the end of March, where they had the SoFlo night and they came in their swimsuits and beach towels and sunscreen on their face, and they did that whole flip-flop vibe and everything there. So I don't think we're going to do that. I think it's going to be, the white suits, pastel shirts, and just really leaning into that Miami Vice look. And since a lot of people wanted it in the Winter Classic jersey, I think this is going to be the way to treat the fans there. And for the Rangers, they've done a few looks over the years. And I think this year, celebrating their 100th year and leaning into kind of that old school New York, I'm thinking they're going to do some sort of pinstripe, very old New York style suit, which would lean into the New York Yankees pinstripe uniforms, and bringing that into the baseball stadium here, and bringing that kind of old school New York pinstripe kind of look. So I'm hoping they do something like that. I think that would look really nice and put together and kind of channel the history of their, kind of home baseball team there, but also lean into that 100-year traditional kind of style there. So I think two suit forward looks for both teams, but I think it'll be done really well either way.
Yeah, and when the Winter Classic was held at Fenway Park, I mean, there's an old picture of Brad Marchand coming in with an old Red Sox uniform, and the fact that there is that baseball tie here. The Marlins and the Yankees did face off in a World Series in 2003. I was only 10 years old when that happened, so long time ago when that did. But yeah, and I believe the Yankee Stadium was built the first Yankee Stadium was built in the 20s, around the same time that the New York Rangers were coming into the NHL. So if you're having that baseball dedication tribute along with the 100-year anniversary and playing in an outdoor game, I think that would be actually a great way of coming into the stadium for the Winter Classic. I'm actually looking up the exact year that the first Yankee Stadium was built. It was 1923, actually. So 3 years off. So maybe that would make a little bit of sense there. So
yeah,
you might be,
and not full,
you might be onto something.
Yes, and not a full baseball look. Like I loved when the Bruins did those Boston Red Sox full uniforms there. The Rangers maybe being the more visiting team. I think this pinstripe kind of old school New York suit would really feed into that. So we'll see.
The Marlins did wear pinstripes as well during their first 19 years of existence. So we'll see if there is that in fact. But Kassi, I want to thank you so much for joining me on today's edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Thank you for joining. And before we sign off here, tell everybody where they can follow you and your work online.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. This has been so fun. And for everyone who wants to follow along on all socials, it's Kassi_Coviello. You can find me on all platforms there posting about Panthers, hockey, and fashion through my blog and social media. And if you're ever at a Panthers home game, be sure to stop and say hi if you see me. Love hanging out with Panthers fans and talking hockey.
Awesome. Thank you, Kassi, and see you very soon.
Yes, thank you.
And if you like what you're hearing, please subscribe to the podcast to be notified every single time the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast jumps into your podcast feed. Don't forget to also subscribe to the other shows on Locked On NHL Network, including Locked On NHL, Locked On Fantasy Hockey, Flip Livingstone and Stu Roden, and Locked On NHL Prospects. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. So I'm Armando Velez with Kassi Coviello. And you've been listening to Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We're your team every day.